Welcome to the Culinary Now podcast. I'm Jamie Schiff,
And I'm Matt Britt.
and today we're going to talk a little bit about the new release of the McCormick flavor forecast. They just released it, well, last month, and they have their top flavor predictions, what they think is going to be happening in 2024. And I want to dive into it today. Does that sound good to you, Matt?
It's awesome. I think this is kind of like a freestyle, though. I love it. We're going to use the flavor as a base, but who knows where it will go?
Yeah, who knows? So I'm just going to dive into what they said. They're predicting that the flavor of the year is going to be tamarind.
I love it. I love it. I think it is incredibly underused and by most people that live on the eastern United States. And I think that's a generalization, but when I say underused, I think it actually stems from availability. It is difficult to find, let alone like whole tamarind, but like even like purees and like in grocery stores. And we've done episodes in the past about how American supermarkets basically suck. But I mean, I will tell you that I have a little jar of tamarind in my pantry, and it's not something that's easy to find. It took me a little bit of like hunting to kind of to nail it, but it's one of those things. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. And I was just going to give a little bit, read from the article a little bit about it, in case you're not familiar. But it's a spice native to Africa, India, and the Middle East. And it has an acidic, tangy, sweet flavor, which lends itself well to Latin, Caribbean, and Mexican cuisines. And yeah, today we're seeing it kind of like cross utilized. And I agree. It's something that we don't see mainstream. And I would be really happy if we started to see it pop up in more dishes. And I think for specifically for the acidity that it does bring. And I see it in desserts too. I think the acidity in desserts
That's what
would
I'm
work
gonna.
well.
That's what I'm curious about, and to pick your brain on is I bet this would be outstanding in desserts because of the sour of that tang. But my introduction to tamarind was exactly based off. It comes from what you just read. It's like I worked at a contemporary Latin American restaurant in DC for a long time, and we used tamarind fairly often because of its sort of connection and appropriateness to the Caribbean and how that influences cuisines of those islands like Trinidad, Tobago. I mean, it's big in that flavor profile, and we leaned heavily on it. It's probably not my favorite cuisine to use it in, though. I think that one of and this is probably back to where its origin is I use it a lot in Indian cooking, and obviously it has
Yeah.
sort of cultural origins in India, but that's where the little jar in my cabinet gets sort of like put into most is when I'm making a sauce for pork vindaloo. Is I'll use tamarind almost as like a, it's going to be a horrible analogy, but it's almost like a version of Worcestershire, or it plays that role in sauce creation with some Indian cuisine that I kind of play around with, which is, by the way, not a master app, but that's sort of where I see it. But what desserts? Like I would
Yeah. It's
like.
it's not something I really ever used in the industry. And maybe towards the end of my time in the industry, but it's not something I really ever used. I think what I saw it most used in was like cocktails
Mm,
and used for drinks in that way to lend the acidity to lend that like flavor profile. But
mm-hmm.
yeah, my dessert repertoire didn't include it. But I see my students use it and I love how they use it and I'm glad they are because it is such a very it's very potent. It's a very potent flavor, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
very specific flavor. And what's funny is this article goes on to talk about some other trends that they see coming up, and acidity and sour is one of the big things they think is going to take forefront. And tamarind plays right into that because of its acidity. So it's interesting that they then go
No,
on to talk about how they're seeing things, coconut vinegar or more acidic agents kind of taking the main stage, and just to kind of help boost the flavor profiles of dishes, helping to layer in those flavors. So acidity goes beyond just this one ingredient. We're talking vinegars, cultured dairy,
Right.
citrus flavors. And I love that. I love sour in dessert. So I'm glad that that's going to be taking a step forward.
Same.
And I'm hoping more of the heavy flavors will take a step back.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Obviously, we're basically lockstep on most things. But when it comes to sour and its ability to enhance food, and I'll stick with food because or like savory items because that's sort of my wheelhouse. But the beverage is an important sort of note, and then obviously desserts. I could see this in breads and a million things. Um, the sour is something that I think a lot of aspiring cooks or even like professors at a culinary school struggle to always acknowledge and to bring to that dish, right? So, one of the feedback I give students all the time, and it's probably maddening for them because they have no clue what I mean by it, is I tell them that things need to be brighter, right? Brighter. And like,
Yeah.
I'm not talking visually, although sometimes I guess visually, but like brighter, it kind of, if you had to put one of a flavor profile to that, it would be sour. It would be something
Yeah.
that's going to immediately target, those first reactions, right? So, in my experience, students are becoming more and more proficient with developing depth of flavor, which I think is a need, right? They're able to leverage umami. They're able to build, complex flavor profiles that have bitterness, whether that's through charring or searing or roasting, and then obviously salt and sweet is something they're pretty much going to normally. But I think we're always afraid, and I say we, I'm putting myself in the students' shoes, to add something sour because we might perceive it as contradicting, those other sort of really big
Hmm.
heavy hitters.
Yeah.
But I mean, we know that sour, it's like one of those top notes of flavor, right? So if you take something and you taste sour, it's like bam, right off the bat you get that, right? So I look at it as the ability to excite the diner with something that
Hmm.
has a little bit of brightness, and a little bit of acidity. And then if you have all these sort of rich, complex, undertones, those are the flavors that, stay with you. Like we know bitter lasts a long time. Like, so like those are the things that can really, make the bite or the dish endure long term. Like it won't just be a flash in the pan, but you need that
I
first,
Yeah,
you know,
I'm gonna take what you said and I'm gonna kind of teach on it a little bit like I would in my class, okay? So
oh my God,
for
I'm so,
me,
so nervous.
so for me, I look at sour and I think it's gonna balance my sweetness, right? So sour can balance sweetness. It can cleanse the palate. You see it a lot in like intermezzos in
Mm-hmm.
courses where you're going from savory to sweet, something that will refresh your palate, cleanse the fat, open up your taste buds, get it ready for the next course. That's what I'm gonna say on sour. But then moving on to what you said about bitter and how bitter lasts a long time, because that's exactly the science of how we taste, right? The first things that we taste are top notes, and those are things that are gonna be sweets and salties. Those are the first things that hit your palate. And then you kind of get into the main flavor of something, to what we're gonna call this like middle note where flavor explodes, fat comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get the sours, you'll get the layers of flavor, but then as you get a base note, as your tasting experience winds down, if you have bitters, if you have those deep, dark, robust flavors, which you find in things like bitters, they're going to be long lasting. That's the base, that's the ending. And that's where you find things like trigeminal too, things that hum and tingle, things that are spicy or cooling like mint. Those are going to be those base notes that are going to stay after you're done tasting and linger on your palate. Bitter happens to be one of them, but bitters aren't bad. And you just listed 1,000 ways that bitter can really enhance the flavor of something, but everyone shies away from these big, bold flavors, sour and bitter, because they think that they're going to be bad. When they're used properly, they actually really do enhance the whole overall experience of the dish. Did I just get
If
too nerdy on you there?
No, I mean, you know this, but we have a course in our sustainable food systems program at JWU that talks about the science of cooking, and everything that you just sort of got preached on in a very good way is catnip for that course. It's like you talk about top notes and trigeminal and all these things that are like that are honestly, I don't know if they're good to know. Like, I feel like at the end of the day, like you just want to bite into a burger and have good flavor. Like I sometimes worry about like, we've had this conversation before. It's like, is it better to know or not know? Right. So it's like when you know, you unfortunately know everything. And that's a problem. Right. So it's like, it can be overkill.
But when you have that, the thing is when you have that burger and you just want to bite into it, you totally can. But you might subconsciously have the thoughts telling you, "Oh, pair this with this. Ketchup is acidic and it's sweet, right? Your burger's probably a little bitter if you grilled it and it has some char on it." So, if you subconsciously start pairing things together, you're gonna bite into a burger and it's gonna be the best experience. But if you're making it for someone else and you have this underlying knowledge, you can actually probably build a better burger knowing how to layer the flavors in.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
Like,
So,
sure,
so it's,
pickles are gonna be acidic, right? It's all there. We just don't think about it. Cheese
it,
is umami and salty. Like it's really
it,
it's
it
perfectly built for you.
it goes back to, and this was probably a few years ago, we talked about like the difference of hard work versus talent.
Yes.
And I think we came out of that episode, which I encourage everyone to go listen to. I think it was really great. Not to toot our own horn, but it was a good episode. Sorry, it sounded horrible. But one of the things that came out of that is that the majority of people do well in life in this industry via hard work, right? Talent is this sort of elusive thing. But then I go back to what we're talking about now is like there are people, grandmothers, that just they can cook in a way that hits every one of those notes. But if you ask them why their food tasted good, they would have no clue that they're targeting these incredibly scientific nuances. And it's that to me is talent, right? And when you can do something and have no clue why it's good, it's like that's raw talent, right? Most of us as chefs, not because we're just eternally curious, like we get to building those perfect bites of flavor by understanding how to construct, like understanding that those pickles on that burger or on that Chicago hot dog, it's not just there because it's tradition. It's there because when you bite that in harmony with everything else, it works. Like the light bulb goes on, and that's like we under. I don't know if we undervalue that. Do we?
I don't think so. I think you're right, it is talent, but it's also human nature. So the other part of the whole science of tastes is that we grow up well, as a human years and years ago when we used to have to forage for food in like the olden times, bitter was a sign that something was poison. So we have evolved to
Yeah.
not like bitters. We kind of shy away from bitters. Sweets, we are ingrained to like. We like sweet flavors. Breast milk is sweet. If formula is sweet, it's something that we are exposed to from a young age. Like it's comforting to us. We enjoy sweet flavors. And if we look at that, it could just be your natural instinct to avoid bitters, maybe put some sugar into like your tomato sauce like, and you're doing things and you don't
Mhm.
even know that you're doing them. And so yes, it is talent, but I think it's also just innate human evolution that's helping. And if you tap
For
into
sure.
that, I think you end up with the talent that you're speaking of in
It's
that in that in that way.
it's reflection and being able to taste something and
Yes, reflection. Yes.
identify that it's not perfect. When you talk about bitter, I think back to really cryptic advice you can give to a student and like watch their mind just like you can see the gears like literally stop for a second. But ultimately, when they kick back on it, you get better results. Is when we tell students or when I tell students to roast bones, like if they're making a stock or whatever, and I'm like, I want you to take them to their like literally the closest to being absolutely burnt possible, but then stop it right there. And the students are like, what? Because if you can capture the utmost intensity of one flavor and be able to stop it, right, before it goes just over that line, and then you can pair that, right, with other components, whether that's aromatics or, flavor profiles or whatever. Like that is how you truly get the most out of, the animal that
Mhm.
died or whatever. It's like, you're truly leveraging that ingredient to get the most out of it. And like, so, and it's things we're scared of. Like, you're right. Bitters are poison, right? Like chemicals. They have the kind of like bitter, like that's, and it's probably good for like really young kids. But then as people emerge, and if they choose to enter the culinary arts, baking and pastry arts, this hospitality as a career, you kind of have to rip that band-aid off and be like, no, 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 I want you to burn that. And but not to the point where it's like scorched, because you can't get that flavor out, but I want you to take it to the absolute extreme. And that's super scary for a young person, 18, 19 years old, who's spending a ton of money and wants to do this and is afraid to fail. Like, to tell them like, no, 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 you're going there. Like, I can imagine that's pretty scary for a student.
Oh, for sure, but it's how we both know that's how you learn. And actually what you just said goes perfectly back to the next topic on our article of predictions for this year,
All
and
right, all right.
it's called Indulgence Refined, and there's two categories under this. And one is what you were talking about. It's food maximalism, and it's by layering flavors and textures in creative, fun, and thoughtful ways so you can experience flavor to the max. That's exactly what we were just talking about. You're talking about that with roasting the bones, right? To get the maximum flavor out of something.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the other side of this that's in the same category is nostalgic. So what's old is new again, and restaurants are reintroducing childhood favorites with a gourmet twist.
It's I feel like this is something that people say is a trend every year. And
Right.
it's been on a list for like there is, our a recent episode, or it was the last episode we did was about hot dogs, and I think, that's a thing that you see. I mean, you mentioned during that episode that, there were restaurants close to us that were choosing to take something as iconic as a hot dog, which every kid, most kids, most Americans
Mhm.
have eaten, and to elevate it to make it, something great. Like, that's not an accident that works, right? People like familiarity. They like to feel like they're, sitting on a park bench or a bench watching a baseball game when they were 10 years old. Like, that is most people, that is a
Yep.
comforting thing. So it's like, you know, chefs who do this are strategic, right? It's not just like, hey, on a whim I want to cook a hot dog. I know, it's like I'm doing it because I'm taking my knowledge of people's love for nostalgia, and you're essentially just capitalizing on it, which is, I mean, listen, that's great, right? I mean, it's like that's what people want. So give the people what they want.
Right, I agree with you. It's not new, and connecting food with memories and emotions is something that's been happening for a long time. And we in like JWoo dessert kind of terms, we would call this like neoclassic, like a new classic. And
Mm-hmm.
if you look back in the early 2000s, Per Se was doing a take on a deconstructed Snickers bar. And we've been doing deconstructed, neoclassic, whatever you want to call it, forever, whether we realize it or not. Like you said, I don't think this is anything new. I think we'll continue to see it, and maybe that's what they're getting at with this for a trend. But I think it's just going to continue to be around, continue to be something that people are inspired by, dishes from their childhood, dishes that they've really enjoyed, classic candy bars. I don't think it's going anywhere, and I don't think it's new either. So I agree with you on that.
You know what's funny is I'm looking at the
Mm.
website. I'm looking at indulgence refined, and there's like some
Mhm.
recipes they give. A sloppy Joe Voulevant, right? So Voulevant for me is dated. Like, it's something I learned when I was in culinary school in the early
Yeah.
2000s. But it was usually filled with some sort of like, mushrooms or escargot or something like, cream, and it was kind of it's an older but decadent thing. I look at this as nostalgia is not just like remembering the good times. Like, I think about sloppy joes, and that triggers like
Mhm.
not the best like dining experience of my life. Like, I'm not alone that my mom probably opened up a can of sloppy Joe mix at some time in my
Yeah.
life and put it between a burger bun and said, "Here's dinner." So that would, on the surface, make me not want that. But then I'm like, just I'm like curious. I'm like sloppy joes. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, now I want to try that. It's the intention is it's like a Jedi mind trick. It's very sneaky, but it's also very pointed. And credit to people that can do it and pull it off and do it well, because it's important. Yeah, tamarind on the whole, as we kind of bring it back to the flavor, I
Hmm.
think I'm excited to see that this is not getting its due finally, because I think a lot of people respect the ingredient, but we need to be talking about stuff like this more, right? We no one. I don't want to have a really high end, pricey, exotic ingredient that ultimately doesn't have strong roots. I want people to talk about stuff like tamarind and to be like, this is what you should be cooking with, because the majority of people who cook, probably have never used this, and it's a
True.
major gap in their game if they're not reading stuff like this. We're not sponsored by McCormick, although I would love to take their money. So please, McCormick, send us a sponsor. Like, they should read this article, because this is education, right? And the only way you get better at food is continuing to open your mind and try new things.
Absolutely. And I know we talked about this a lot at the beginning, but I do just want to touch on the last point of trends that they see coming. And this goes back to what we talked about, but it's called thoughtfully borrowed, where chefs are looking at their background, heritage, and experience. And it can even be like regional traditional cooking and how that's all being combined, and chefs are paying homage to that through a celebration of flavor, experience, and cuisine, as it's quoted right here in the article. And I think we see that through a lot. Like, I think every chef relies on their background, on their heritage, and their experiences when they're looking for inspiration. And I think we talked about that when we talked about tamarind being like their flavor of the year, where it encompasses so many different styles of cuisines and different
Yes,
applications.
yes, 100%. I couldn't agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. It's just good. Like, I enjoy talking about this stuff because it's what we do.
It is. And I have one last question for you.
Okay.
Is there anything that you think is going to be like big in 2024 that you see could be as like an emerging trend or just emerging in the industry?
Oh man, it's so I you put me on the spot here. I think that, and this is sort of you see this with cookbooks, right? And I think that we're going to continue to see ultra focus coming into play when it comes to regional cuisines. And I think that that is a healthy and good thing. That when you, as a chef, a home cook, the ability to just deep dive on a general area, I think is, and this is sort of a testament to where we are in the world of people embracing cooking. I don't think that that's satisfying enough. I don't think people are just like, I want to learn about Japanese cuisine. They're going to be like, I want to learn about Kyoto cuisine, or or insert whatever, you know, I want to learn about Oaxacan cuisine. And, chefs at their core have done this probably a little bit more regimented, a little bit more in a regimented way than the home cook. But I think we're getting to a point where curiosity is inspiring people to dig deeper. And I think the response of industry, people writing cookbooks, people putting out content is accommodating that. Like, I think you're seeing stuff that it allows people to scratch that itch. So that's not like an ingredient, but I do think that's sort of a trend, is that we're going to continue to
Hmm.
see moving forward, is this sort of hyper focused, like laser dialed in, like specific type of research being done to expand cooking. What about you? Don't just ask me the
I
tough
think,
questions. You get the tough question too.
yeah, no, I think. I agree. I don't have like an ingredient, but I think we're going to see a big focus on more of the casual side of dining. And if you look at the James Beard nominees on the long list right now, they they are a lot of less fine dining. It's definitely a push towards casual. There's an ice cream shop that's on the long list in way up in northern New Hampshire.
That
It's
is
like
so cool, by the way.
really,
So cool. Like that
yeah,
is in there.
it's called Super Secret Ice Cream, and I kind of wanna go. But it's yeah, I think we're seeing this push towards more casual chefs and casual restaurants being recognized for what they're doing, and it's not all about fine dining anymore. So I think we're gonna see that continue to grow, with food this year, just being more on that casual side.
You know, so music to my ears, obviously, because I in my deepest brain, there's always a part of me that wishes I had gone down that sort of really fine dining path. But like in the whole style of like you're born to do a certain thing. Like obviously, I thrive more in casual, and so this is music to my ears, right? Because I think that like as someone who's cooked casually. Or in the casual, I always cook casually. As someone who's cooked in the casual market segment for a long time, to see it get its due is great. But on the beard nominees,
Mhm.
I don't know if you know this, but it's 14 of the finalists this year are JWU alumni, which is
Didn't know the number, that's awesome.
yeah, 14. I mean, that's like, point of pride, right? So, go those people. And like, Chris Fio's on there. He was on this podcast before. It's like,
Yes.
there's, there's some great talent there. But yeah, like, wouldn't it be like, I feel like we need an ice cream shop to win a beard award. Like, that would be like tide changing. It would be really cool.
It would, and I mean, we've touched on it before, like, you even see, like, food carts getting Michelin stars, like, it's
And they should.
the landscape yeah, the landscape of what we assume is worthy of these nominations is it's changing.
I go back, I harken back a little bit to like the episode we just did with Bill Lenway, right, and hot dogs. If you listen, and like he would probably laugh at me for saying this, but like if you listen to the amount of time and energy and thought that goes into just selecting the right bun,
Yeah,
why is that not worth someone who spent the same amount of time, hours, whatever, trying to recreate, I don't know, whatever a fine dining by, I don't like it's like good work is
you're
good work.
totally right.
Good work
Yeah.
is good work. So like recognize all that. And I think that speaks to our culture and inclusion and everyone has a seat at the table. And I think that that's a really healthy thing when it comes to recognizing success in food.
Yeah, it's great diversity with the awards and what's being shown
For
in
sure.
all categories, and I think yeah, it's awesome. We have a tasty future ahead.
Ooh, I like it. All right. On that note, catch you later, Jamie.
Absolutely, great talking to you.